One of the most popular case formats in the ITX space is the compact sandwich style with adjustable spines, such as the Fractal Terror and the Form DT1. Well, Jonsbo have thrown their hat in the ring with this stunning 11.3 litre entry, the Jonsbo T9. A solid aluminium case with a sculptured wood base, an adjustable spine to give you flexible chamber sizes capable of fitting a 78mm CPU cooler or a 3-slot GPU up to 310mm long, providing you the ability to create a powerful yet portable gaming PC. So here it is, the Jonsbo T9. I've been itching to get my hands on this one, and our friends at AliExpress have stepped up and sent us one over. The release images from Jonsbo do not do this case justice. It looks and feels absolutely incredible. It's really solid, and you can buy this case in black or silver. Now, I think the black with dark wood complement each other, which is why I've chosen this model. Now, included in the box, you do get the riser cable, which is a Gen 4, very handy. We get a user guide, and we get the screws that we're going to need in a nice little cardboard packet. And all the screws are conveniently labelled on the bag, so you know what you're going to be using when you build in this case. Now, all the aluminium panels are clipped into place, and they're very stiff. We've got a little leather tab which allows us to pull this top one up, and that's why this thing feels so solid. You can see the clips on the top. Then once you've taken the top lid off, we can then slide out the side panels. They're held in place incredibly well. The tolerances are really good. Also, you notice there's dust filters on each of the panels. Nice 4mm thick aluminium panels, they are really solid. Okay, once we're inside, you can see a usual sandwich layout, and the spine is screwed in place. Now, there is only 3 locations, so it is a little bit more limited than the Terra and the T1, but we get the option of either 58mm CPU with a 3-slot GPU, a 68mm CPU with a 2.5-slot GPU, or a 78mm with a 2-slot GPU. So there's plenty of cooling options there available. Now, for the video today, I've actually got a 2-slot GPU, so I'm going to max out my CPU actual slot to have that 78mm free, and we're running a 9800 X3D in here for a pure gaming build. Now, this whole wooden base is sculptured, which is really nicely done and looks and feels incredible. You can see we've got some airflow in the bottom, and this middle channel here has the actual power cable, which comes right out the back and fits in really nicely. And as we move to the front, you see we do have a USB-C port and the power button in that nice little red accent. Another feature I'm absolutely loving about this over the Terra or the Form DT1 is this little panel here and the adjustable GPU bay here. What this means is when you've actually adjusted the spine to the position you want and adjust these panels, you don't get left with a gap like you do on the Form DT1 and the Terra. And that's something that I didn't really like about those cases. This one is locked into place in the spine size of your choice and looks great when it's finished. We also have space for a 120mm fan at the top, an SFX PSU. We also have space for a 2.5-inch SSD at the bottom, and if you use a shorter GPU, you can fit in a 3.5-inch spinning Rust drive if you so wish, though I'm not sure many people will do that these days. Now, you can buy this case at AliExpress, whose 11th of the 11th shopping festival starts now. Not only is there a lucky bucks draw, but there's also millions of coupons available. So let's snap up the best deals of 2025. AliExpress have given us some exclusive discount codes for you to use. Stock and time is limited, so don't hang about. Here is a list of the discount codes, but I'm also going to write them in the description down below for you so that you can use them at your own leisure. Also, join my team and get up to 10% cashback on almost everything. You can earn more points by completing daily tasks such as signing in, browsing and placing orders. The higher the team points that we get, the more cashback that you get. Come and check it out now. It's really easy to join my team. One, you can click my link in the description down below and start earning. Or lastly, just scan this QR code on the screen right now. Okay, so let's go get building. Now, as I want this to be a pretty powerful gaming PC, I want to use the 9800 X3D, currently the best pure gaming CPU on the market. We're also going to need a decent ITX motherboard, and I'm going to be using the Asus B850-i. This motherboard looks great, has an amazing array of features such as Gen 5 PCIe and Gen 5 M.2 slots, Wi-Fi 7, good rear port selections, and decent onboard audio. And in our testing so far, it's also been great with all the RAM kits that we've thrown at it. So let's prepare the motherboard for our CPU and heatsink by first removing the plastic AMD heatsink brackets, and then let's grab our 9800X3D to install into the socket. We will install the cooler shortly, but first I want to add the SSD, and because this is a Gen 5 SSD slot on this motherboard, I wanted to use a fast Gen 5 drive. This may be a little bit overkill for the build, but as this is a premium build, we're using the Western Digital SN8100 with reads and writes at just under 15,000. The large SSD heatsink on the motherboard should easily cool this drive, so let's remove the 2 screws, then remove the tape on the thermal pads, and then finally install that SSD. Once it's clipped into place, we can just screw the heatsink back on the top. There is also a second slot on the back of the motherboard, but I'm only going to be using the 2TB primary drive for this build. Next, let's install the RAM. And for this build, I need low profile RAM so that I can use the large CPU cooler. So I've chosen the Kingston Fury 32GB DDR5 6000 megatransfers kit. This is a decent price with great CAS speeds, and 6000 megatransfers is the sweet spot for the 9800X3D. So now that we've got the RAM and the SSD installed, it's time to add that heatsink. Now, as we've got 72mm of space, I wanted to use the largest cooler I could fit in here. So I've chosen the Thermalright AXP120-X67 ARGB. This large cooler comes with a 120mm slim fan at the height of 67mm. This should provide great cooling for the processor, but still leave a couple of spare millimeters away from the side of the case so we avoid turbulence. The cooler comes in all different colours, but we've chosen the white with that ARGB fan, so there's going to be a little bit of colour shining through the side of the case. Now this cooler is very easy to fit by installing its supplied mounts, adding a nice blob of thermal paste onto the CPU, then screwing that CPU cooler down onto the frame. Next we need to plug in the fan and the ARGB cable. I want to stress this is a large cooler and it overhangs the RAM, which is why we needed that low profile RAM, plus it will make cable management a little bit tougher later. But I do like a challenge. So with the motherboard ready to go, it's time to prepare the case. Firstly, I'm going to remove the PSU bracket. I then need to adjust the spine. Although I could have left the spine where it was, it had about 15mm extra space above the CPU heatsink. So by moving it down one space, it also gave me a little bit more clearance around the GPU. So hopefully there'll be no turbulence for the CPU and that GPU. Moving the spine is straightforward, but does require you to remove a few screws. Then slide it into the new place that you wish and screw it back together. It's not as easy as the Terra, but you don't need to do this very often. With the spine ready, it's time to insert the motherboard and screw it down with the 4 screws. There is not a lot of room in the bottom of the case, so you're going to need a decent length driver. This is also a good time to plug in the front panel header and the USB-C cable. Next, we need to install the PSU, and for this build, I've chosen the Corsair SF850. These tiny SFX PSUs are reliable, dead quiet, and have braided modular cables to make working in these tight spaces relatively simple. As always with tiny cases, only install the cables that you're going to use for your build. You get an absolute ton of cables in this SF850, but if you install all of these cables, you just end up spending hours trying to tidy them all away. So with my 24-pin and 8-pin CPU cables and my 2 8-pin PCIe cables connected to the PSU, mount the PSU to the bracket with the screws provided with the PSU. Then my advice is to connect the cables to the motherboard now and then thank me later. Trying to connect that 24-pin CPU cable with the PSU in place is really hard work. Now once the CPU cables are inserted, slide the 2 PCIe cables to the other side of the chamber and then set the PSU in place and screw it back down with the 2 original screws. Now flip the case over and install the graphics card. And for this build, I'm using the PowerColor Reaper 9070 XT. This is probably one of the best bang for buck cards in 2025 and much cheaper than an Nvidia 5070 Ti, whilst often beating it in performance. I love the PowerColor Reaper version as it's a compact 2-slot GPU that easily fits in a lot of ITX cases, though we could have used a much thicker card in this case if we wanted to. Now availability of the 9070 XT finally seems to be decent, and if you can't find the Reaper in your region, there's also the Asus Prime or the Gigabyte Gaming, which are also good compact alternatives. And I will put a link down below in the description so that you can check them out. Now with the card slotted into place, screw that card down and insert the 2 PCIe power cables. All we've got left to do now is to add a fan. I've just chosen a great price Thermalright 120mm by 25mm fan. Squeezing it in was a little bit difficult and I had to cable tidy those PCIe cables so they didn't catch in the blades. but having that decent 120mm fan up the top should really help with those temperatures. So with that now done, slide the panels back into place and pop on that top cover. And that's it, we're done. Let's move it over to my gaming desk. Okay, so with Windows installed, and my fans tweaked and drivers updated, it's time to fire up some games. And starting with Battlefield 6 at 4K with a mix of ultra and high settings and a bit of FSR, this game looks stunning on my 4K 240Hz OLED display. The 9070 XT has no problems gaming at 4K, and despite drawing 300 watts, the temperatures remained in the 60s, and the Jonsbo T9 only reached 40 decibels, giving a nice whoosh. Perfect for when you have the PC sitting on the desk right next to you. During the gaming, the 9800X3D CPU sat at a rock solid 5.25 GHz the whole time, reaching a maximum of just 70 Cs without having to ramp that fan up to ear-splitting levels. Overall, I'm just really impressed with this case. It looks great, the build quality is fantastic, and it can house some really powerful gaming components and that keep the noise in check. Now, I would say the only negatives to this case is the lack of water cooling options, but as I often travel with my ITX systems, I do actually prefer air cooling anyway. Now, this build wasn't cheap, coming in at about £1,630 in the UK, but prices are volatile, so make sure you check out the links below for the latest prices. And that's it for this video. Drop me a comment if you have any questions, and I will get back to you. And as always, thanks for watching.